K-9 unit should have passed the old house like they always did. Just another dead shell on a forgotten street. But tonight,
The owner said there were squatters,
Bear
but
stopped
this
so
feels
abruptly
different.
that
Look at the
Officer
dog.
Elena Cruz almost
He's
stumbled
terrified
over
of
him.
whatever is in there.
His body went rigid, claws scraping asphalt, every muscle pulled tight like a wire about to snap. The abandoned house loomed ahead, its windows black, its porch sagging into the darkness. Bear's lips curled, not in aggression, but in something far stranger, fear and urgency tangled together. Then, without warning, he yanked the leash from Elena's hand and bolted straight for the rotting front door, barking like someone was screaming inside. The house had been empty for 20 years. At least that's what everyone believed, until Bear started scratching at the wood, whimpering like he had finally found what he'd been searching for all his life. Before we step inside that abandoned house and uncover what Bear was desperately trying to tell his handler, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. And tell me, have you ever seen a dog sense something no human could? Your stories help these moments travel even further. Maple Hollow was the kind of town where time moved softly, drifting through the streets like mist rolling across early morning fields. Rows of modest houses lined the roads, their paint chipped, their porches worn, but still carrying the warmth of lives lived inside them. Except for one. At the edge of the old district stood a house everyone avoided, a leaning silhouette swallowed by vines, its broken windows staring blankly at the street like hollow eyes. Children whispered about ghosts. Teenagers dared each other to approach the fence, and adults pretended the house didn't exist at all. It had been empty for 20 years, ever since the disappearance of Liam Harper, a local teenager whose case had gone so cold that even mentioning his name felt like disturbing a grave. The house had belonged to his family once, a place of laughter and late-night dinners, until everything shattered one autumn night. Liam vanished without a trace. His parents moved away, crushed beneath the weight of hope turned to dust, and the house became a monument to something Maple Hollow never healed from. Officer Elena Cruz had grown up hearing Liam's story whispered on porches. She remembered the flyers taped to lampposts, the search parties moving through the woods, the desperate eyes of neighbors who kept checking their backyards for any sign of him. Elena was 12 then, old enough to remember the fear in her mother's voice, young enough to not understand why someone could simply vanish. The case had carved itself into her memory like a scar that never faded. Now, years later, Elena patrolled those same quiet streets with Bear, her K-9 partner, a massive German shepherd with amber eyes and a reputation for sensing danger before anyone else even realized something was wrong. Bear had a gift. Some handlers called it instinct, others intuition, but Elena believed it was something deeper. He felt the world in a way humans couldn't, smelled echoes, heard memories, tasted fear long after it was gone. Tonight had begun like any other night patrol under the heavy glow of street lamps. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked pavement. Clouds hung low, smothering the stars. Not a single car passed. Not a single window glowed. The quiet pressed against Elena's skin in a way she recognized. Something was off. Bear sensed it first. His ears twitched, his head lifted, his steps slowed. When they turned onto Willow Creek Lane, Bear's posture changed entirely. His tail stiffened, his stride shortened, his breathing shifted into tense, shallow pulls. Elena followed his gaze to the abandoned Harper house rising in the darkness ahead. She had passed it countless times without incident, but something about tonight made her stomach tighten. The wind carried the faint squeal of rusted hinges. A shutter banged lightly against the siding, Bear trotted toward the house with growing urgency. Elena tightened her grip on the leash, but he continued forward, compelled by something invisible. When they reached the broken gate, Bear stopped dead in his tracks. Elena felt the tension in the leash like a pulse. Bear leaned forward, nostrils flaring, his entire body trembling with a recognition Elena couldn't understand. He let out a soft whimper. The house seemed to inhale, as if something inside was waking. Elena swallowed hard. Memories of missing persons briefings flashed through her mind. Faces frozen in time. Families waiting for answers that never came. Liam Harper's photo had been one of the first she studied when she joined the force. She still remembered his bright grin, the hope in his eyes. To this day, the department kept a file on him, updated only out of duty, never out of expectation. But Bear didn't know any of that. Bear just knew scent, emotion, history embedded in the air, and whatever he sensed now ran deeper than a ghost or a memory. This wasn't fear. This wasn't danger. It was recognition. Elena knelt beside him, brushing her hand over his fur. "What is it, buddy?" she whispered. Bear didn't blink. He stared at the front door of the abandoned house as though someone stood behind it. Someone waiting. Someone alive. The porch creaked under the weight of wind. A single leaf skittered across the steps. The faint smell of damp wood mixed with something else. Something faint, human, and recent. Elena felt a chill crawl up her spine. For the first time in 20 years, the Harper house did not feel empty. Bear moved first. His head lifted sharply, ears pricking forward as if catching a sound Elena couldn't hear. His chest expanded in a slow, deliberate inhale. Then another. And another. Each breath was deeper, more urgent, pulling information from the air like threads being unraveled. His tail stopped moving entirely, hanging rigid behind him. The world narrowed to a single point, him and the house. Elena straightened, watching her partner with growing unease. She had seen him track fugitives across flooded fields, detect narcotics hidden behind layers of steel and plastic, locate a missing child buried beneath rubble. But she had never seen him react like this. Not with such intensity. Not with such grief. Bear took one step toward the porch, then another. His paws pressed lightly against the ground. Yet Elena heard every movement. The soft crunch of dirt under claws. The whisper of his breath. He climbed the first porch step slowly, as though expecting something to strike from the shadows. His muscles trembled beneath his fur, not from fear, but from recognition. Something in the air belonged to him now. He stopped at the door, his nose pressed against the splintered wood, breathing in short bursts, rapid and uneven. His ears flattened. His entire posture shifted from alertness into something deeper. Sorrow, longing, a subtle tremor running through his spine. He let out a soft, broken whine. Elena felt her throat tighten. "Bear, what are you sensing?" He didn't move. Instead, he lifted his paw and placed it gently at the base of the door, claws tapping lightly on the rotting surface. The gesture was unmistakable. He wasn't asking for entry. He was asking for permission. Then the shift came. Sudden, violent. Bear's head jerked upward, eyes widening, his lips curled back, exposing his teeth, not in aggression, but in warning. A low growl rumbled from deep in his chest, vibrating through the porch boards. His fur stood on end, a dark ridge running from neck to tail. Elena felt the growl in her bones before she heard it with her ears. Something inside the house moved. A thump. Faint. Weak. almost like someone shifting their weight against a wall or dropping to the floor. Elena's hand shot to her holster, fingers brushing the grip of her weapon. "Bear, back up!" But he didn't listen. He pressed closer to the door, nose trembling, breath accelerating into short, panicked pulls. Then he stepped sideways, just a half step, but enough to reveal an emotion Elena had never imagined seeing in a police dog. Fear. He looked back at her, ears angled back, eyes wide with something like pleading. He pawed at the door again, harder this time, claws scraping the wood. Not trying to break in, trying to get her to understand. Elena drew in a sharp breath. Is someone inside? Bear's answer was immediate. A bark, short, urgent, cracking like lightning. He pressed his nose to the gap beneath the doorframe, inhaled once more, then recoiled as if struck. His hind legs buckled. A soft, heart-wrenching whimper escaped him. Not fear, recognition. Someone he knew was inside, or someone whose scent carried history. Old, faint, buried beneath dust and decay, but unmistakable to a creature who lived and remembered through scent alone. Bear lowered his head until his nose touched the floorboards. His body flattened, tail pulling inward, posture collapsing into a position dogs take when they recognize a familiar scent, long thought gone. Elena swallowed hard. "Bear, who is it?" He didn't respond. He just pressed his forehead to the door, breathing slowly, mournfully. A soft, almost human sound escaped him, a trembling exhale, heavy with grief. The house creaked again. The sound was softer this time, weaker, a voice, faint, cracked, barely more than breath. "Help!" Elena froze. Bear's head snapped up. His entire body surged with energy, ears forward, muscles tight, breath sharp. He barked again, but this time the bark was filled with hope as much as urgency. Elena stepped back, heart hammering. She reached for her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Cruz. I need immediate backup at 42 Willow Creek Lane. I have possible contact. Someone is alive inside." Bear didn't wait. He turned, trotted down the porch steps, then sprinted toward the side of the house. Elena followed as he pressed his nose to a boarded window. Sniffing rapidly, whining louder. He backed up, braced himself, and lunged, slamming his weight into the loose boards. One cracked, then another. Dust exploded outward as Bear struck the wood again and again. His growl surged with desperation, each blow more powerful than the last. Elena stared, realization dawning through the shock. Bear wasn't breaking in out of aggression. He was breaking in out of recognition. Whoever was inside that abandoned house wasn't just alive. They had been waiting. And Bear had finally found them. The last board splintered beneath Bear's weight, crashing inward with a howl of tearing wood. Dust engulfed the space, swirling into the beam of Elena's flashlight as she stepped forward, heart pounding against her ribs. The smell hit her first. Stale air, mold, rot, and beneath it all, something human. Faint, fragile, recent. "Bear, wait, slow," she whispered, but the command had no weight now. Bear crawled through the opening, landing lightly on the warped floorboards inside. His ears twitched forward, his breath vibrated in sharp bursts. His tail stood straight out, rigid, pointing like an arrow deeper into the darkness. Elena climbed in after him. The house swallowed her whole. Inside, the air was heavier, thick with years of silence. Curtains hung like skeletal shrouds over shattered windows. Wallpaper curled from the walls in strips, peeling like old skin. Every step creaked under her boots, each sound magnified by the otherwise crushing quiet. Bear moved ahead, nose low, body stretched long and tense. He wasn't searching blindly. He was following a thread, pulled by a scent he knew better than Elena knew her own name. Elena scanned the room with her flashlight. The living room lay in ruins. Furniture collapsed, dust thick enough to write in, a broken photo frame on the floor, glass splintered around it. Elena lifted the frame carefully. The picture inside was faded, half-eaten by time, but the image was still clear enough. The Harper family. A father, a mother, and their teenage son, Liam Harper, the missing boy, the one who vanished 2 decades ago, the one who had once lived in this house, the one everyone assumed was dead. Bear growled softly. Elena snapped back to attention. He stood at the threshold of a narrow hallway, shoulders hunched, ears pinned sharply forward. A cold draft seeped from the dark corridor, carrying with it a smell that made Elena's skin crawl. Fear. She stepped closer, gripping her flashlight and weapon. "Bear! Lead!" He obeyed instantly. His paws clicked softly on the warped wooden floor as he crept down the hall, stopping at a door half-rotted off its hinges. He sniffed the crack beneath it. His reaction was immediate. He pulled back sharply, sneezing, then let out a low, trembling whine. His body lowered until his belly nearly touched the floor, his tail tucked. Elena felt her mouth go dry. She reached forward and pushed the door open. It swung inward with a scream of rusted hinges. Inside was a small room. Collapsed bedding lay in a heap. Empty cans, old bottles, bits of torn fabric scattered across the floor. A lantern, long dead. A small pile of blankets arranged in what looked like a makeshift bed. The layer of dust on the floor wasn't uniform. Someone had been here recently, disturbing the settled grains with frantic footprints. Someone had been living in this abandoned house. For how long? And why? Bear stepped inside, nose pressed to the blankets. He inhaled deeply, then turned his head toward Elena, and let out a sound she had never heard from him before. A cry. Soft, broken, recognizing something impossible. "Is it him?" Elena whispered. "Is it Liam?" Bear nudged the blankets, pawed gently at the dent shaped like a curled human body. He sniffed the air again, then stared at the far wall. His breathing changed. Fear had left him. Something else replaced it. Determination. He barked once, a sharp, commanding sound, then lunged toward the back corner of the room where the wall met the floor. Elena followed, shining her light. At first she saw nothing but dust and shadow. Then she noticed the faint outline of a door, a crawl space. Bear pawed at the edges until the panel shifted. Elena grabbed the handle and pulled. The door groaned open, releasing a gust of cold, damp air from the darkness below. "A cellar. Dispatch, this is Officer Cruz." Elena whispered urgently into her radio. "I need backup at my location. Possible living victim discovered, entering basement area now." Static crackled back. No reply. The house was too old, too fortified by decay, too deep in the dead zone for a signal. Elena exhaled shakily and aimed her flashlight into the hole. Wooden steps descended into blackness. The smell rising from below was unmistakable. Earth, mold, and something faintly metallic. Blood. Bear didn't wait for her. He descended the stairs, one careful step at a time. Elena followed, legs trembling. The basement ceiling was low, forcing her to duck. Her light swept across cold stone walls, a dirt floor, and scattered objects she couldn't yet make sense of. A pile of blankets, rusted tools, a lantern, old food wrappers. Then her light hit something else. A chain, heavy, bolted to the wall, and beside it, a metal cuff meant for an ankle or wrist. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't a shelter. This was a prison. Bear moved past the chain toward the far end of the room. He sniffed at a mound of blankets, nudged them aside with gentle insistence. Elena shined her light and froze. A plate of food sat on the dirt floor, still warm. Someone had eaten here. Recently. Bear's ears shot up. He growled, stepping between Elena and the shadows, posture coiling with tension. Elena followed his stare to the darkest corner of the basement. Two eyes stared back, wide, sunken, glinting with terror. A man stepped forward, shaking, his skin pale, his beard tangled. His clothes hung from his thin frame like rags. His voice cracked out of his throat in a whisper that shattered something deep inside Elena. "Please, don't hurt me." Bear whimpered softly, tail wagging once with a trembling sweep. Elena swallowed hard. "Sir, what's your name?" The man stared at her, breath shallow, chest heaving as though speaking cost him everything. His voice broke. "I'm Liam. Liam Harper." Elena's heart stopped. He wasn't dead. He had been here, alive, hidden beneath the town for 20 years. But Liam's eyes shifted suddenly over Elena's shoulder. Panic twisted his expression. His voice dropped to a frantic whisper. "He's coming back. You shouldn't have opened the door." Bear snapped toward the stairs, teeth bared, muscles surging into rigid alertness. Footsteps thudded overhead. Slow, heavy, deliberate. They were not alone. The footsteps above grew heavier, each one vibrating through the rotting beams like the pulse of something monstrous waking after a long sleep. Dust drifted from the ceiling, spiraling into the flashlight beam. Elena stepped in front of Liam instinctively, weapon raised, heart thundering in her chest. Bear stood beside her, hackles raised, body angled protectively toward them both. He didn't bark, didn't move, didn't breathe. He just watched the stairs with cold calculation. "Liam," Elena whispered without turning. "Who's upstairs?" Liam shook violently, pressing himself against the wall as though trying to disappear into the stone itself. "He never left," he whispered. "He's always here. He comes and goes, but he always comes back." Elena tightened her grip on her weapon. "Who?" Before he could answer, a board creaked near the top of the steps. Bear growled, low, primal, vibrating through the air. The silhouette appeared. A tall figure, gaunt and slow-moving, descended each step carefully, as though savoring the moment. His face remained in shadow, but his posture, rigid, controlled, sent a jolt of recognition through Elena. She didn't know him, but Liam did. His knees buckled, and he let out a quiet sob. "No," Liam whispered. "Please just go. Leave before he sees you. He won't let you leave." The man reached the bottom of the steps and stopped, his voice a quiet rasp coated in dust and years of secrecy. "You weren't supposed to come here. Officer Cruz." Elena froze. He knew her name. He stepped into the light, and the truth hit like a blow to the chest. Detective Rowan Miles, retired, respected. For 25 years, he had been the lead investigator on the missing persons cases in Maple Hollow, including Liam Harper's. Elena remembered him from academy lectures, a man praised for his instincts, his dedication, his tireless work. But the man standing before her now was a ghost of that legend. Eyes sunken, clothes dirty, fingers trembling with something unhinged. Liam whimpered. He's the one. He took me. He kept me. Elena's blood turned to ice. The detective who had searched for the lost boy was the one who stole him. Rowan gazed at Liam with an eerie softness. I kept you alive. You should thank me. He turned to Elena. The world outside would have forgotten him. Forgotten all of them, but not me. I remember every child who needed saving. Saving. The word twisted Elena's gut. You abducted them. Rowan tilted his head. I rescued them from the world. And you've ruined everything. He stepped forward. Bear lunged, teeth bared, a vicious snarl ripping through the basement. Rowan flinched back, raising his arms. That dog, he hissed. He always knew. Animals see the truth in people. They see the rot. Elena positioned herself between Rowan and Liam. It's over. You're under arrest. Rowan's laughter sliced through her words. Over. You haven't seen the truth yet. He lifted his hand and pointed to the far wall. There's a tunnel behind that stone. I carved it myself. Do you know where it leads? Elena didn't answer. To the old storm drains, Rowan continued with a smile that never touched his dead eyes. Miles of them. Miles of rooms. Miles of secrets. You think Liam is the only one I kept? The air left Elena's lungs. Bear snarled again, stepping forward, but Rowan moved with unexpected speed. He grabbed a rusted pipe from a nearby shelf and swung it in a wide arc. Bear dodged, the metal clanging against stone. Rowan swung again, forcing Bear back, each blow closer than the last. Elena, Liam cried, don't let him take me again. She aimed her weapon, but Rowan ducked behind a support beam, retreating toward the tunnel entrance hidden behind stacked crates. You can't stop me, Rowan rasped. You're too late. They're still down there, waiting. And I won't let you ruin my work. Bear lunged again, this time faster than Rowan could anticipate. His jaws snapped shut on Rowan's coat sleeve, yanking him backward with brutal force. Rowan fell hard, slamming into the stone wall. The pipe clattered across the floor. Bear, hold, Elena commanded, but Bear didn't bite. He stood over Rowan, growling, pinning him with the weight of his fury. Rowan laughed through the pain. You think you've won? You haven't even started. Elena moved toward the crates, her flashlight trembling in her hand. She shoved them aside, kicking through decades of dust until she found it. A slab of loose stone, just as Rowan described. She pushed it aside. Cold air blew through the opening. A tunnel, carved by hand, leading into darkness. Liam sobbed behind her. There were others. He kept us separate so we wouldn't rebel. He said they belonged to him. Elena's voice cracked. How many? Liam shook his head helplessly. I don't know. I don't know anymore. Elena swallowed hard. Rowan smiled from the ground, blood trickling from his lip. You'll never reach them in time. They know I'm the only one who can control them. They'll run. They'll hide. And you'll spend years searching. Bear barked sharply, shutting Rowan up. He turned to Elena, tail stiff, eyes bright with fierce clarity. He didn't see despair in that tunnel. He saw survivors. He saw people he could save. Elena knelt beside him. You're right, Bear. We're going in. Rowan screamed, voice cracking with rage as officers' sirens finally echoed faintly from above ground. You'll die in those tunnels, he howled. They're mine. But Elena wasn't listening. She clipped her flashlight to her vest, checked her weapon, and followed Bear into the darkness. The tunnel breathed cold air onto Elena's face as she stepped inside. Its walls were uneven, carved out by hand, damp with condensation. The ceiling dipped low in some places, forcing her to crouch, while Bear moved effortlessly beneath it, nose to the ground, muscles drawn tight with purpose. His paws made almost no sound, just soft, rhythmic taps that echoed faintly down the corridor. Behind them, Rowan's screams faded into the distance as officers finally swarmed the house. But the danger wasn't behind them. It lay ahead, in the darkness, in the miles of hand-dug passages that had hidden years of suffering. "Bear," Elena whispered. "Slow. Stay close." But Bear couldn't slow. His body vibrated with urgency. Every breath he took, every step he made, screamed of lives trapped in the unseen depths of the earth. His tail was stiff, angled forward like an arrow. His ears twitched constantly. He knew they were not alone. Far down the tunnel, a faint sound echoed, a shuffle of bare feet, a gasp, a whimper. Elena's spine stiffened. She raised her weapon, flashlight beam slicing through the dark as she moved beside Bear, matching his pace. The tunnel widened abruptly into a cavern-like chamber. Elena froze at its edge. Blankets, old toys, crates turned into makeshift shelves. A lantern burned low, flickering weakly. And in the far corner, huddled together like frightened deer, were three figures, children, thin as shadows, eyes enormous with fear. Bear whimpered softly. One of the children, a teenage girl with tangled hair, flinched at the sound. "Don't hurt us," she whispered. "Please, we'll be good. We'll be good." Her voice cracked on the last word. Elena lowered her weapon slowly. "You're safe now. I'm Officer Cruz. We're here to take you home." The girl stared blankly, as if the word home had no meaning. Bear stepped forward gently, tail lowered in a soothing curve. He dipped his head, approaching slowly. The smallest child, a boy no older than 8, reached out with trembling fingers. Bear touched his nose to the boy's hand, and the child's eyes filled instantly with tears. He buried his face in Bear's neck, sobbing uncontrollably as Bear stood still, absorbing every ounce of grief. Elena swallowed hard. "We're getting you all out, I promise." But then a sound cracked through the tunnel, a distant metallic slam. Elena spun, flashlight darting across the rock. "Someone's in here," she whispered. The teenagers stiffened. The girl whispered, "He has helpers." Helpers. The word sent a shockwave through Elena's chest. Rowan hadn't acted alone. Bear growled, deep and sharp, turning toward a narrow tunnel branching off the chamber. The growl grew louder as footsteps echoed closer. Fast, heavy, unsteady. Someone running. "Stay here," Elena ordered, pointing at the children. "Bear, lead!" Bear sprinted into the side tunnel, Elena on his heels. The walls tightened around them, turning the passage into a claustrophobic squeeze. The lights from the main chamber dimmed behind them until only the beam of Elena's flashlight guided their path. Ahead, a figure stumbled into view. A man, filthy, wild-eyed, wielding a rusted hammer. His expression twisted into a manic snarl when he saw them. "You don't belong here," he screamed, lifting the hammer. Before Elena could aim, Bear launched forward. His roar filled the tunnel, echoing like thunder trapped underground. The man swung the hammer blindly, but Bear ducked under the arc, jaws clamping onto the man's forearm. The hammer clattered to the floor as the attacker screamed, falling backward. Elena rushed forward, kicking the weapon aside. "Bear, release!" Bear obeyed instantly, backing off just enough to let Elena cuff the man. The attacker writhed on the floor, shouting incoherently. "He'll kill you all," he spat. "He'll come for them. He always comes back. Elena tightened the restraints. Not tonight. But Bear wasn't looking at the attacker anymore. He was staring deeper into the tunnel, growling. Elena rose slowly, gripping her flashlight. Bear! What do you hear? He took a step forward, then another. His growl deepened, filling the space with dread. Elena followed him into a long, sloping corridor. The floor dipped lower, the air colder. Dripping water created soft, rhythmic taps that echoed like distant footsteps. As they descended, the ground trembled lightly. A sound began to rise ahead, metal grinding against stone. A door opening. Elena stopped breathing. Rowan. He had escaped the officers above. Bear bolted forward. Elena! Rowan's voice bellowed from the darkness. Turn back. You don't know what these tunnels really are. Elena raised her weapon. Rowan, it's over. No, Rowan screamed. You don't understand. I made them need me. Without me, they will tear this place apart. They'll scatter into the town. You have no idea what you're freeing. Bear growled louder, positioning himself between Elena and the darkness. His tail lashed once, furious, defiant. Rowan's silhouette emerged. Wild hair, bloodied face, hands shaking with rage. He held a long knife, blade glinting under the thin beam of moonlight seeping through a crack in the ceiling. You should have stayed out, he roared. He charged. Elena fired once, warning shot hitting the stone above him. Rowan didn't flinch. He lunged straight at her. Bear met him mid-air. The impact shook the tunnel. Rowan slammed into the ground with Bear on top of him, the knife skittering away. He screamed, kicking wildly, but Bear held him down, teeth bared inches from Rowan's face. You ruined everything, Rowan shrieked. They were mine! Elena rushed forward, grabbing Rowan's arm and twisting him onto his stomach. Bear released just long enough for her to secure the cuffs. Rowan thrashed, spitting and screaming until his voice cracked into incoherent rage. Elena knelt, breath trembling. It's over. No, Rowan whispered, eyes filled with a terrifying certainty. It's only over if they want it to be. As if cued by his words, faint footsteps echoed behind them. The children, they had followed. Elena turned slowly. The three stood just beyond her flashlight beam, eyes wide, expressions trembling between fear and hope. The teenage girl stepped forward hesitantly. Is he gone? She whispered. Elena exhaled. He's done. You're safe. Bear walked toward them, tail wagging slowly. The smallest child dropped to his knees. Hugging Bear so tightly, Elena felt tears sting her own eyes. Rowan went silent. His expression twisted, rage collapsing into defeat. The tunnel hummed with a new sound now. Breathing, living. Survivors reclaiming the air that had once been stolen from them. Elena rose, her voice steady. We're taking you home. She looked at Bear. Lead us out. And Bear, battered but unbroken, barked once, clear, sharp, triumphant, before guiding them toward the faint glow of freedom waiting at the end of the tunnel. The night sky greeted them like a long-forgotten promise, as Elena, Bear, and the children emerged from the storm drains. Cool air washed over their faces, and for the first time in years, the children lifted their heads without fear. Floodlights and patrol cars illuminated the field, officers rushing forward with blankets, medkits, and trembling relief etched across their faces. But the children didn't run to the paramedics. They ran to Bear. He stood still as they surrounded him, pressing their small hands into his fur, leaning against his steady warmth. His tail wagged softly, a calm rhythm, as though he understood that his presence was the first safe place they had known in a long time. Elena watched, her chest tightening, the weight of the past hours settling into her bones. Bear had carried them all through darkness. He had found what no one else believed still existed. Rowan was dragged from the tunnel in handcuffs, no longer shouting, no longer fighting, just hollow, empty. He glanced toward the children, but no recognition sparked in his eyes. Years of delusion had swallowed whatever humanity he once had. As officers escorted him away, Elena forced herself to look, to remember. To promise she would never let a monster hide behind a badge again. Liam Harper sat on the back of an ambulance, a blanket around his shoulders. He stared up at the sky, blinking against the overwhelming rush of freedom. 20 years stolen, 20 years underground, 20 years believing the world had forgotten him. But Bear hadn't. When Bear approached, Liam froze. Tears filled his eyes, and his cracked voice escaped in a whisper. "You came back for me." Bear climbed onto the ambulance step, pressed his forehead gently to Liam's knee, and let out a low, soothing rumble. Elena swallowed hard. She knew Bear had never been trained for this kind of emotional recognition, this memory, this bond that survived decades. But somehow, he remembered Liam. Or perhaps he remembered the scent of a life that had never stopped calling for help. Elena sat beside Liam. "You're safe now," she said softly. "We'll get you home. We'll get you everything you need." Liam looked at her, eyes hollow but rebuilding piece by fragile piece. "Do you think people will remember me?" Elena nodded. They never stopped. Bear rested his head in Liam's lap, and Liam's shaking hand settled on the dog's fur. The smallest child, the boy who had clung to Bear moments earlier, looked up at Elena with a voice so small she barely heard it. "Will he be our friend too?" Elena's smile trembled. "He already is." In the weeks that followed, Maple Hollow transformed. The town that once whispered about the old Harper house now spoke openly of survival, of courage, of a dog who saw truth where humans saw only decay. Neighborhoods gathered to welcome the rescued children. Old files were reopened, cold cases warmed beneath new light, and Rowan Miles, once a respected detective, now faced the justice he had evaded for decades. But it was Bear who carried the town's heart. People left treats at the station. Children drew pictures of him with capes and bright red hearts. Even the toughest officers found themselves kneeling beside him at the end of long shifts, whispering thanks into his fur. One quiet evening, Elena and Bear returned to Willow Creek Lane. The Harper house stood silent, police tape fluttering gently along its porch. Elena paused at the gate, memories brushing her like cold fingers. Bear walked ahead, stopping where the front door had been shattered open. He sniffed the air once, deep and deliberate, then turned away. The house no longer called to him. His work there was done. Elena knelt beside him, stroking the fur between his ears. "You brought them home," she whispered. "All of them." Bear looked at her, eyes warm, steady, ancient in their understanding. A hero without words, a guardian shaped by instinct, a reminder that sometimes the greatest detectives walk on four paws. As they turned to leave, a soft breeze drifted through the quiet street, carrying with it the faintest echo of laughter, not haunting, but hopeful. Life returning to a place long abandoned. Before the video ends, I want to know, do you believe dogs can sense what humans are too afraid or too blind to see?